The morning sun painted golden streaks across the marble floors of St. Catherine's Cathedral as Celeste Romano adjusted her grandmother's pearl necklace one final time. Her reflection in the antique mirror showed a young woman of 22, with dark auburn hair cascading in soft waves over her shoulders and emerald green eyes that held both determination and uncertainty. The ivory silk gown had been in her family for 3 generations, but today it felt more like a costume for a role she never auditioned for. "Mia, you look absolutely beautiful," whispered her mother, Alina Romano, as she placed a gentle hand on Celeste's shoulder. Lena's eyes glistened with unshed tears, though Celeste couldn't tell if they were tears of joy or sorrow. The Romano textile empire had been crumbling for months, and this marriage represented their only salvation from bankruptcy. Celeste took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of white roses and baby's breath that filled the bridal suite. Through the tall windows, she could see guests arriving at the cathedral, their expensive cars gliding along the circular driveway like a parade of wealth and status. Somewhere among those guests was Gabriel Montenegro, the man she would marry in less than an hour. Meeting the Montenegro fortune, Gabriel Montenegro stood at the altar, his tall frame impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit tailored to perfection. At 34, he had built Montenegro Technologies from a small startup into one of the most innovative companies in the country. His success in the tech world was legendary, but his personal life remained a mystery to most. Dark hair with subtle silver threads at the temples gave him a distinguished appearance, while his deep brown eyes held an intensity that made people take notice when he spoke. As the wedding march began, Gabriel watched Celeste walk down the aisle with her father. Ricardo Romano, once a proud businessman, now looked older than his years, the weight of financial ruin evident in his stooped shoulders. But Celeste walked with grace and dignity, her chin held high despite the circumstances. That brought them to this moment. When their eyes met across the altar, both Celeste and Gabriel felt something unexpected. It wasn't love, not yet, but there was a spark of recognition, as if they were seeing something in each other that others had missed. Gabriel noticed the intelligence in her green eyes and the way she carried herself with quiet strength. Celeste saw beyond his reputation as a cold businessman to something more human, more vulnerable. Vows of convenience. Father Miguel began the ceremony with traditional words that felt hollow in the context of their arranged marriage. The vows they exchanged had been written by their family's lawyers, carefully crafted to sound romantic while protecting business interests. But when Gabriel took Celeste's hand to place the wedding ring on her finger, his touch was surprisingly gentle. "With this ring, I take you as my wife," Gabriel said, his voice steady but not unkind. Celeste looked into his eyes and saw something she hadn't expected to find there. Instead of the cold calculation she had feared, she glimpsed a loneliness that matched her own. "With this ring, I take you as my husband," she replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. For just a moment, the weight of their situation seemed lighter, as if they were partners facing an uncertain future together, rather than strangers bound by obligation. The reception at the Grand Palacio Hotel was a showcase of both families' remaining wealth and connections. 300 guests celebrated the union of the Romano and Montenegro families, while Celeste and Gabriel played their roles as the happy couple. They danced their first dance to a romantic ballad, moving together with surprising ease despite having barely touched before this moment. The mansion in the hills as evening approached. Gabriel drove Celeste to their new home in the exclusive Lomas district. The Montenegro mansion sat atop a hill overlooking the city, its contemporary architecture and floor-to-ceiling windows creating a sense of openness while maintaining privacy. The perfectly manicured gardens and infinity pool spoke of wealth and taste, but to Celeste, it felt more like a beautiful prison than a home. "Welcome to your new home," Gabriel said as he opened the car door for her. His courtesy was unfailing, but there was a formality to it that reminded Celeste of the distance between them. The mansion's staff waited to greet them. Carmen, the housekeeper who had worked for Gabriel for 8 years, and Diego, the butler who managed the household with quiet efficiency. "Señora Montenegro," Carmen said with a warm smile, "it's wonderful to have you here. I've prepared the blue suite for you, just as Mr. Montenegro requested." Celeste felt her cheeks flush. She had wondered about the sleeping arrangements, but Gabriel had thoughtfully solved that particular awkwardness. "Thank you, Carmen. It's very kind." Gabriel gave Celeste a tour of the house, showing her the library with its impressive collection of books, the art studio that overlooked the garden, and the music room with a grand piano that gleamed under the soft lighting. Each room was beautifully appointed but felt more like a museum than a lived-in home. Separate worlds under one roof when they reached the second floor. Gabriel stopped outside a door near the end of the hallway. "This is your room," he said, opening the door to reveal a spacious suite decorated in soft blues and whites. The room had its own sitting area, walk-in closet, and private bathroom. French doors opened onto a balcony with views of the city lights below. "It's beautiful," Celeste said, genuinely impressed by the thoughtful touches. Fresh flowers set on the dresser, and she noticed that her favorite books, which someone had clearly researched, were arranged on the bedside table. "I thought you might appreciate having your own space while you adjust to everything," Gabriel explained. "My room is at the other end of the hall. There's no pressure for anything to change until you're comfortable." The relief Celeste felt was immediate and overwhelming. She had dreaded the physical expectations of marriage to a virtual stranger. But Gabriel's consideration touched something deep inside her. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more to me than you know." First night reflections that night, as Celeste unpacked her belongings in her new room. She reflected on the unexpected turns the day had taken. Gabriel Montenegro was not the cold, demanding man she had feared he would be. His thoughtfulness in preparing her room, his gentleness during their dance, and his respect for her boundaries suggested a complexity she hadn't expected. From her balcony, she could see Gabriel in his study on the first floor, working late into the night. The sight of him alone at his desk, surrounded by the symbols of his success, but clearly solitary, made her wonder about the man behind the fortune. What dreams had driven him to such heights? What fears kept him working so late on his wedding? Night Gabriel, meanwhile, found himself unable to concentrate on the financial reports spread across his mahogany desk. His mind kept returning to moments from the day, the way Celeste had looked walking down the aisle, the brief connection he had felt when they danced, and the genuine gratitude in her voice when he showed her to her room. He had approached this marriage as a business arrangement, a way to merge two families' interests while fulfilling his own need for companionship and eventually a family. But seeing Celeste's vulnerability and strength, her intelligence and grace, made him wonder if this arrangement might become something more meaningful than either of them had imagined. The morning after the next morning established a pattern that would define their early days as husband and wife. Gabriel left for work before dawn, his dedication to Montenegro technologies requiring 12-hour days and frequent travel. Celeste woke to find fresh coffee waiting in the kitchen and a note from Gabriel asking if she needed anything for the day. Carmen showed Celeste around the neighborhood, pointing out the nearby parks, shops, and cultural centers. "Mr. Gabriel is a good man," Carmen said as they walked through the local market. "Works too much. Maybe, but his heart is kind. He will be a good husband when he learns how." The comment stayed with Celeste throughout the day, as she explored her new surroundings and tried to imagine building a life in this affluent corner of the city. She wondered what it would mean to have a marriage based on gradual understanding rather than immediate passion. Could two people who had never chosen each other learn to choose each other every day? That evening, Gabriel returned home to find Celeste reading in the library. She had chosen a collection of poetry by Pablo Neruda, and Gabriel was pleased to see her making herself comfortable in his space. "How was your first day as a Montenegro?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her with a glass of wine. "Different from anything I've known," Celeste replied honestly. "But Carmen has been wonderful, and the neighborhood is beautiful." "How was your day?" Gabriel found himself sharing more than he usually did about his work, describing a new project that would bring technology education to underserved communities. Celeste listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that showed her intelligence and social awareness. As the evening progressed, both realized that their marriage, born of necessity, might have the potential to grow into something neither had dared to hope for. The question was whether they would have the courage to let it happen. 3 weeks into their marriage, Celeste and Gabriel had developed an unspoken rhythm that felt both comfortable and distant. Each morning, Gabriel would leave a small note next to the coffee machine before departing for Montenegro Technologies. At dawn, the notes were simple but thoughtful. Carmen mentioned you like fresh pastries from the bakery on Maple Street. I asked Diego to pick some up for you today, or there's a new art exhibition opening downtown if you're interested. The driver is available whenever you need him. Celeste began to look forward to these morning messages, seeing them as small windows into Gabriel's considerate nature. She would save each note in a small wooden box on her dresser, though she couldn't explain to herself why. These tiny gestures suggested a man who paid attention, who cared about her comfort and happiness despite the formal nature of their arrangement. The mansion felt less imposing as Celeste began to make it her own. She rearranged the flowers Carmen brought from the garden, left books open on various tables where she had been reading, and began taking her morning coffee on the terrace overlooking the city. Gabriel would sometimes see her from his study window before leaving for work. Noticing how she seemed to bring life to spaces that had felt empty for years, discovering shared passions one evening in late spring, Gabriel arrived home to find Celeste in his study, standing before the wall of architectural drawings that showcased his early passion for design. She was studying a sketch of a community center he had designed but never built, her finger tracing the lines of the structure with obvious appreciation. "That was one of my first projects," Gabriel said from the doorway, his voice softer than usual, "before Montenegro Technologies took over my life completely." Celeste turned, not startled, but pleased to see him home earlier than expected. "It's beautiful. The way you've designed the open spaces to flow into each other, it would have created such a sense of community. Why wasn't it built?" Gabriel moved closer, standing beside her to look at the drawing. "Money, as usual. The city council decided the budget was better spent on projects with more immediate economic returns. I learned that day that good intentions don't always translate to real change." "But you haven't stopped trying," Celeste observed, gesturing to other sketches that showed schools and community centers. "All of these designs show someone who cares about more than profit." The conversation that followed lasted until nearly midnight. Gabriel told Celeste about his dreams of using technology to solve social problems, while she shared her abandoned aspirations of writing novels that could change how people saw the world. They discovered that both felt trapped by expectations. Him by the demands of business success, and her by the limitations placed on women in their social circle. "I used to write poetry," Celeste admitted as they sat in the garden under the stars. "Terrible poetry, probably, but it felt like the only way to say what I really thought about things." "I'd like to read some of it sometime," Gabriel said, and the sincerity in his voice made Celeste's heart skip in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. The art of almost touching as May turned to June. The carefully maintained distance between Celeste and Gabriel began to shrink in small but significant ways. Gabriel would brush her shoulder when reaching for a book she was reading. Celeste would let her hand linger when passing him his coffee cup. These moments of near contact created an electric tension that both were acutely aware of, but neither openly acknowledged. One Saturday morning, Gabriel found Celeste attempting to hang a painting in the hallway outside her room. She was standing on a chair, trying to reach the hook while balancing the heavy frame, clearly struggling with the task. "Let me help," Gabriel said, moving to steady the chair. As he reached up to take the painting from her hands, his body pressed close to hers, and for a moment neither moved. Celeste could smell his cologne, could feel the warmth of his chest against her back. Gabriel's hands covered hers on the frame, and time seemed suspended. "Thank you," Celeste whispered, her voice barely audible. Gabriel's face was inches from hers as she turned her head, and she could see golden flecks in his brown eyes that she had never noticed before. "Celeste," Gabriel said softly, his voice carrying an emotion he rarely allowed others to hear. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility and unspoken longing. But instead of leaning into the moment, Celeste suddenly stepped down from the chair, creating distance between them. "I should let you get to your work," she said quickly, avoiding his gaze. Gabriel stood holding the painting, watching her retreat to her room with a mixture of confusion and disappointment. Walls built from fear, though. Incident with the painting marked a turning point in their relationship, but not the one Gabriel had hoped for. Instead of growing closer, Celeste began to pull away, taking her meals in her room more often and spending longer hours away from the house. She enrolled in a photography class and began volunteering at a local literacy center, filling her schedule with activities that kept her from being alone with Gabriel. Gabriel, meanwhile, threw himself deeper into work, staying at the office. Until late hours and accepting business trips he would have previously declined. The notes he left for Celeste became shorter and less personal, and their dinner conversations returned to the polite but distant tone of their first weeks together. Carmen noticed the change in the household's atmosphere. "They are both so sad," she confided to Diego one afternoon as they prepared dinner, "that neither Gabriel nor Celeste would be home to eat. They look at each other when they think the other isn't watching, but when they are together they act like strangers." The tension came to a head on a rainy Thursday evening in June. Gabriel had returned home early, hoping to find Celeste and perhaps bridge the growing distance between them. He found her in the library, not reading, but staring out at the rain with an expression of profound melancholy. "Celeste, we need to talk," Gabriel said, his voice carrying a firmness that surprised both of them. She turned to face him, and he could see that she had been crying. "There's nothing to talk about, Gabriel. We have an arrangement, and it's working fine." "Is it?" Gabriel moved closer, his businessman's facade dropping completely. "Because I feel like we're both miserable, and I don't understand why. 3 weeks ago, we were actually talking to each other, getting to know each other. Now you barely look at me." The truth begins to surface. Celeste stood up, wrapping her arms around herself as if she were cold. "This isn't supposed to be complicated, Gabriel. We're supposed to be polite strangers who happen to share a house and a last name. That's what we agreed to. But that's not what's happening, is it?" Gabriel's voice was gentle but insistent. "At least it's not what's happening for me. I find myself looking forward to coming home to see you. I think about our conversations during the day. I wonder what book you're reading or whether you liked the flowers Carmen picked from the garden." Celeste felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. "Gabriel, please don't what? Don't admit that this marriage is becoming something neither of us expected? Don't acknowledge that we're starting to care about each other?" "Yes," Celeste said, her voice breaking. "Don't do any of that because it's terrifying. What happens when you realize that I'm not the sophisticated woman you need as a wife? What happens when you get tired of having someone around who doesn't fit into your world?" Gabriel stared at her, finally understanding the source of her fear. "Celeste, do you think I married you because I wanted a trophy wife? Someone to look good at business dinners and charity events? Didn't you?" she challenged, tears flowing freely now. "Isn't that what men like you do? Marry pretty young women who will be grateful enough not to ask questions or make demands?" Misunderstandings and revelations. Gabriel felt as if she had slapped him. "Is that really what you think of me? That I'm so shallow, so calculating that I would marry someone just to have an ornament for my life?" "I don't know what to think," Celeste admitted. "I know you've been kind to me, more than kind. But Gabriel, you could have married anyone, someone from your own world, someone who understands business and society and all the things that matter to people like you. Instead, you got stuck with someone whose family needed rescuing." Gabriel moved closer, but stopped when he saw her tense up. "Celeste, look at me. Really look at me." When she finally raised her eyes to meet his, he continued, "Stuck with anyone. Yes, this marriage started as a business arrangement. But from the moment I saw you walking down that aisle, something changed for me. You have intelligence that goes beyond anything they teach in business school. You have a heart that cares about things that really matter. Make me want to be the man I used to dream of being before I got so caught up in building an empire." Celeste shook her head, not wanting to believe him. "Gabriel, you don't know what you're saying? You've been lonely, and I've been convenient? That's all this is. If that were true, do you think I would have given you your own room, your own space? Do you think I would be standing here practically begging you to give us a real chance?" The question hung in the air between them. Celeste wanted to believe him, wanted to trust the sincerity she heard in his voice. But the voice of self-doubt in her head was louder. "The almost kiss, I can't do this," Celeste whispered, moving toward the door. But Gabriel stepped into her path, not blocking her, but offering one final plea. "Celeste, I'm asking you to take a risk with me. Not because you owe me anything or because our families expect it, but because there's something real between us. Something worth exploring. She stopped, her hand on the doorframe. Torn between the safety of emotional distance and the terrifying possibility of genuine connection. Gabriel reached out slowly, giving her every opportunity to step away, and touched her cheek with the gentleness she had come to associate with him. "I see you," he said softly. "Not the woman you think you should be, not the wife you think I want, but you. The woman who reads poetry in the garden at sunrise. The woman who asks thoughtful questions and actually listens to the answers. A woman who makes this house feel like a home for the first time in years." Celeste felt herself leaning into his touch despite her fears. "Gabriel, I'm scared." "So am I," he admitted. "I've never felt this way about anyone before. But isn't that exactly why we should try?" A moment it seemed as if all the barriers between them would finally fall. Gabriel's other hand came up to frame her face, and Celeste didn't pull away. Their lips were inches apart, the kiss they had both been thinking about for weeks, finally within reach. But at the last second, Celeste's fear won. She stepped back, breaking the spell between them. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and fled to her room, leaving Gabriel standing alone in the library with the sound of rain against the windows and the echo of what might have been. That night, both Celeste and Gabriel lay awake in their separate rooms, replaying the conversation and wondering if they had just saved themselves from heartbreak or thrown away their chance at happiness. The distance between their rooms had never felt greater, and the silence in the house seemed to echo with all the words they were too afraid to say. The weeks following their confrontation in the library became known in Celeste's mind as the 27 Nights of Silence. Each evening she would hear Gabriel's footsteps in the hallway, pausing outside her door for what felt like an eternity before continuing to his own room. Each morning she would find his usual note by the coffee machine, but the messages had become formal and distant. "Diego will drive you wherever you need to go today," or Carmen mentioned the air conditioning in your room needs adjustment. Gabriel threw himself into work with an intensity that worried even his business partners. He accepted every meeting, every business trip, every opportunity to stay away from the house where Celeste's rejection echoed in every room. When he was home, he remained in his study until the early hours of the morning, emerging only after he was certain Celeste had gone to bed. Carmen watched the deterioration of their relationship with growing concern. "They are both dying inside," she told Diego, as they prepared breakfast that neither Gabriel nor Celeste would eat together. "She cries when she thinks no one can hear her, and he looks like a man who has lost his soul." The tension in the house became unbearable. Simple interactions became exercises in polite torture. When they accidentally encountered each other in the kitchen one morning, both reaching for coffee at the same time, the brief touch of their hands created such an electric shock that Celeste dropped her mug, shattering it on the marble floor. "Sorry," she whispered, kneeling to pick up the pieces. Gabriel knelt beside her, their fingers brushing as they both reached for the same shard. "Celeste, please. We can't keep living like this." But Celeste had already stood and fled, leaving Gabriel alone with the broken pieces and the lingering scent of her perfume. The storm that changed everything on the 27th night. A violent thunderstorm hit the city with unusual ferocity. The rain pounded against the mansion's windows like desperate fingers, and the wind howled through the trees in the garden with almost human intensity. The power flickered several times before finally going out completely. Plunging the house into darkness, Celeste sat in her room, illuminated only by the candles Carmen had brought her, not trying to read, but finding her thoughts constantly drifting to Gabriel. She wondered if he was working by candlelight in his study, if he was thinking about their broken marriage, if he regretted the day he had agreed to marry her. Around midnight, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold. A crash from somewhere in the house, followed by what sounded like a groan of pain. Despite everything between them, her first thought was for Gabriel's safety. "Gabriel," she called, opening her door and stepping into the dark hallway. "Gabriel, are you all right?" No response came, but she could see a faint light coming from the direction of his study. Grabbing a candle, she made her way carefully down the stairs, her heart pounding with fear and worry, she found Gabriel's study door ajar and pushed it open to reveal a scene that made her gasp. A large bookshelf had fallen, apparently loosened by the house's shaking in the storm. Books and papers were scattered everywhere. Gabriel was nowhere to be seen, but she could hear movement from behind his desk. "Gabriel," she called softly, moving around the massive mahogany desk to find him sitting on the floor, holding his head in his hands. "I'm fine," he said, without looking up, though the slight slur in his voice suggested otherwise. "Just a bump on the head." The shelf fell and caught me off guard. Discovering the hidden truth, Celeste knelt beside him, her earlier fears forgotten in her concern for his well-being. "Let me see," she said, gently moving his hands away from a small cut on his forehead. "You need to have this looked at." "Nothing serious," Gabriel insisted. But he didn't resist when Celeste helped him to his feet and guided him to the leather chair behind his desk. As she went to find the first aid kit, her candle illuminated the scattered papers on the floor. Most were business documents and architectural drawings. But one item caught her attention, a leather-bound journal that had fallen open, revealing pages covered in Gabriel's distinctive handwriting. She shouldn't look. She knew that. But something about the vulnerability in his words drew her attention. The page that lay open was dated, just 3 days after their wedding. She looked so frightened. Today, when Carmen mentioned redecorating the blue room, I wanted to tell her that she could change anything she wanted, that I want this to feel like her home, not just mine. But every time I try to get closer, I see that guardedness in her eyes. She married me out of necessity, not choice. I show her that I'm falling in love with her without making her feel trapped. Celeste's hands trembled as she read, her heart racing. This was Gabriel's private journal, his most intimate thoughts, and she was violating his privacy. But she couldn't stop reading. Another entry. From a week later, I found myself standing outside her door again tonight, wanting to knock, wanting to ask if she's happy, if there's anything I can do to make this easier for her. But what right do I have to burden her with my feelings when she never chose this marriage? She deserves better than a husband who can't even have a normal conversation without making her uncomfortable. The depth of his love revealed with Gabriel tending to his wound in the bathroom. Celeste continued reading, each entry revealing layers of emotion she had never imagined. Gabriel wrote about small moments she had forgotten, the way she hummed while arranging flowers, how she left books face down when she was interrupted while reading, the sound of her laughter when she talked. To Carmen in the garden? Today she asked about the community center drawing in my study. The way she looked at it, really saw it, made me remember why I wanted to be an architect in the first place. She sees things others miss. When she talks about books or art, her whole face changes. She becomes more beautiful than I thought possible. I have to remind myself that admiring my wife isn't a betrayal of the arrangement we made. But it was an entry from just 2 weeks ago that broke her heart completely. I almost kissed her tonight. For a moment, I thought she wanted me to. But then I saw the fear in her eyes, and I realized how selfish I've been. She didn't marry me to be my lover. She married me to save her family. The kindest thing I can do is give her space and stop hoping for something she never promised me. But God help me, I dream about her every night. I dream about a life where she chose me, where she looks at me the way she looks at her books or the sunrise in the garden. I dream about earning her love instead of buying it. The journal fell from Celeste's shaking hands as the full weight of her misunderstanding hit her. Gabriel hadn't been distant because he saw her as a convenience. He had been distant because he thought she saw him as a captor. Every considerate gesture, every respectful boundary, every careful word had been motivated by love, not indifference. Confronting the truth, Celeste? Gabriel's voice came from the doorway, and she looked up to see him standing there with a small bandage on his forehead, his eyes wide with horror as he realized what she had been reading. "Gabriel, I'm so sorry," she began, but he was already moving toward her, his face a mixture of embarrassment and pain. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said quietly, kneeling to pick up the scattered journal pages. "Those are just the confused thoughts of a man who doesn't know how to be married to someone who doesn't love him. But that's just it, Celeste. said her voice stronger than she felt. "You're wrong." Gabriel stopped gathering papers and looked at her. "What?" "You're wrong about me not loving you," she said, the words coming out in a rush before she could lose her courage. "Gabriel, I've been terrified because I do have feelings for you. Strong feelings that scare me because they're real and they're growing every day." Gabriel sat back on his heels, staring at her as if she had spoken in a foreign language. "Celeste, you don't have to say that to make me feel better about you reading my private thoughts." "I'm not saying it to make you feel better," she insisted, moving closer to him on the floor surrounded by scattered papers and fallen books. "I'm saying it because it's true. Gabriel, every morning I look forward to your notes. Every evening. I listen for your car in the driveway, and you told me you were starting to care about me. It terrified me because I had already started caring about you, and I didn't know what to do with those feelings." Breaking down the final barriers, Gabriel's expression shifted from disbelief to hope to something deeper and more vulnerable.
Oh.
"Then why did you pull away? Why did you run when I tried to tell you how I felt?" Celeste took a deep breath, knowing this was her moment to be completely honest. "Because I was afraid you would realize I'm not good enough for you. Gabriel, you're brilliant and successful and kind. You could have married anyone, someone who would be an asset to your business and your social standing. Instead, you got someone whose family needed rescuing." "Celeste, look at me," Gabriel said, reaching for her hands. This time, she didn't pull away. "Do you remember what you said about my architectural drawings? About how they showed someone who cared about more than profit?" She nodded, confused by the change of subject. "That's exactly what you do for me." He continued, "You make me remember the man I wanted to be before I got so focused on building an empire. You see beauty in things others overlook. You have a heart that genuinely cares about people. You make me laugh. You make me think. You make me want to be worthy of you." "Gabriel," she whispered, tears flowing freely now. "I didn't marry you because you needed rescuing," he said firmly. "I married you because something in me recognized something in you. Even in that first moment at the altar, I knew you were going to change my life. I just didn't know it would be by making me fall completely, desperately, hopelessly in love with you." The kiss that healed everything. The storm outside seemed to quiet as they looked at each other. All pretenses finally dropped, all walls finally fallen. Gabriel reached up to touch Celeste's cheek, and this time she leaned into his touch instead of pulling away. "I love you too," she whispered, the words feeling like a prayer and a promise at the same time. "I love your kindness and your dreams and the way you leave me notes every morning. I love how you made me feel safe when I was terrified. I love that you waited for me to be ready instead of demanding what you could have taken." Gabriel's other hand came up to frame her face, and Celeste could see her own reflection in his dark eyes. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "Because once I kiss you, there's no going back to being polite strangers." "I don't want to be polite strangers," Celeste said, moving closer to him. "I want to be your wife." "Really your wife?" When Gabriel finally kissed her, it was with 27 nights of longing and months of careful restraint finally released. The kiss was gentle but passionate, tentative at first but growing more confident as Celeste responded with equal intensity. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard and smiling through their tears. "I can't believe I almost lost this," Gabriel murmured against her forehead. "I can't believe I almost lost you because I was too afraid to fight for us." "You didn't lose me," Celeste assured him, her arms around his neck as they sat surrounded by the debris of the fallen bookshelf. "I was yours from the moment you gave me my own room and told me there was no pressure. I just didn't know it yet." A new beginning as the storm outside began to calm and the first hints of dawn appeared through the windows. Gabriel and Celeste worked together to clean up his study, but more importantly, they talked. They shared fears and dreams and hopes for their future together. They laughed about their mutual misunderstandings and planned ways to turn their house into a real home. "There's something I want to show you," Gabriel said, as they finished stacking the last of the books. He pulled out a drawer from his desk and removed a folder. Inside were architectural plans for a community center, but not the old one Celeste had admired. This was a new design, incorporating everything he had learned about bringing people together. "I started working on this after our conversation about my old drawings," he explained. "I was thinking we could fund it together, make it our first joint project as partners in everything, not just marriage. Celeste studied the plans, seeing in them Gabriel's vision for creating positive change in their community. But more than that, she saw how he had designed it with her in mind, including spaces for literacy programs and creative writing workshops. "Gabriel, it's perfect," she said, and meant it. "When do we start?" As the sun rose over the city, casting golden light through the windows of the study where they had finally found each other, Gabriel and Celeste Montenegro began planning not just a building, but a life together, built on love, understanding, the courage to be vulnerable with each other. The 27 nights of silence were over. The rest of their story was just beginning.